Hi, let's look at the sentences from Chapter 2, the Sententiae Antiquae. Number 1, Salve o Patria. Let's look at salve is your imperative. We'll put it the second person in brackets. Second person, present, active imperative. The command, hail, O fatherland. Number 2, fama et sententia volant. The verb, go to the end of the sentence, the verb is often at the end, volant. Third person, plural, present, indicative, active. Third person, now do we have anything that is plural that can stand in for the subject? In other words, do we have anything in the nominative case that can be plural? Well, fama et sententia, fama is nominative singular feminine, sententia is nominative singular feminine. Both of those individually are singular, but together, joined with this word et, which means and, are plural. Fame and opinion fly. Number 3, da veniam puellae amabote. Let's get this out of the way. This just means please. It's just a little idiom, a phrase that means please. Da is your verb. Accusative, second person, singular, present, imperative, active. Give. Give what? Give the accusative. Accusative, singular feminine. What are we going to do with puellae? That AE at the end means this is the dative case. Dative, singular, feminine. We are giving something to somebody, to the puella in this case. How do I know that this is dative, for example, and not genitive? Because the AE is an ending for genitive also. Here's how. And write this down. With verbs of giving, showing, or telling, the odds-on favorite are for the dative, because we give something to somebody. We tell something to somebody. We show something to somebody. Those are the recipients of whatever we're showing, the direct object. That's why it's called the indirect object. They are the recipients of that. And with verbs of giving, showing, or telling, the odds are that it's going to be the dative case. If you have an AE and it's not a verb of giving, showing, or telling, it's probably going to be the genitive case. Just experience and that general rule of thumb will tell you. So, da, give. Give what? Give pardon. And now we have the dativeness, if you will, to the girl. Give pardon to the girl. Pardon the girl, please. Number 4, clementia tua multas vitas servat. Notice I read the sentence all the way through in Latin first, always. The verb servat, third person singular, present, indicative, active. Do we have anything in the nominative case that can be the subject? We've identified the subject as a third person singular. Do we have a nominative singular? Yes, clementia. Nominative singular feminine. Tua modifies clementia. Vitas, multas, vitas. Multas modifies vitas. This is the accusative, plural feminine. That's your direct object. So, clementia, your clementia, so your kindness, saves, that's the verb there, many lives. Your kindness saves many lives. Number 5, multam pecuniam deportat. I read it all the way through. Deportat, third person singular, present, indicative, active, deportat. Do we have anything in the nominative case that can be the subject? That's what we did for number 4. I looked servat. Yes, clementia is in the nominative case. It's the subject. What do we have here? Nothing is the subject. Therefore, we do not have a noun to use for the subject, so we have to supply a pronoun in English. Latin doesn't have to do that. But in English we do. We always have a subject for the verb, an expressed subject for the verb in English. If one is not supplied, if one is not available, it will be supplied for you. We always have to say he, she, or it if there's nothing in there for you. Latin does not. That's one of the very confusing things when you see deportat versus servat. Well, servat you don't translate servat as he saves because you've got a noun, clementia. But you do translate deportat as he carries off because you have no noun. Could be she carries off, could be it carries off, but you have to supply it. So, deportat pecuniam, accusative, singular, feminine. The accusative case is reserved for the direct objects. Multam modifies it. He carries off much money. Number 6, fortunam et vitam antiquae patriae saepe laudas sed recusas. Two verbs here, laudas, recusas. Both of them are second person singular present indicative active. You praise but you reject. You praise but you reject. You praise but you reject what? Aha, find something in the accusative case. Two things. Fortunam et vitam. Accusative singular feminine. Accusative singular feminine. And then we're left with this little antiquae patriae. So, but let's antiquae patriae. This is either the dative or the genitive. And remember what I said before, with verbs of giving, showing, or telling, it's probably going to be the dative. We don't have that here. We have just you praise and you reject. So my odds are this is going to be the genitive singular feminine. Actually, it's the noun. The noun, the patria, is the genitive singular feminine. You often, this is an adverb that means often, you often praise but reject the fortune and life of the ancient country. Number 7, me vitare turbam iubes. Let's just run to the end, find the verb, iubes, second person singular, present active indicative, excuse me. You order. You order what? Me, accusative singular feminine, singular masculine or feminine, depending on who's reading it. Avoid, this is your infinitive, present active infinitive. And this is your accusative singular feminine. It's the object of vitare. So I have found, and in general, I think this will be helpful for you, that once you get the verb, the Romans, the Latin language often puts the verb at the end. We like that verb right up front, practically second. That's why we talk about the subject, verb, object sentences. We want that verb right up front. So I find it often helpful to grab the verb, okay, then follow the word order for the rest of this sentence. You order me to avoid the crowd. You order me to avoid the crowd. That's what it means. I don't know the context. I don't know what's going on here, but that's the translation. An appropriate translation. 8, me philosophiae do. Do is not a deer in this case. It is the first person singular present active indicative. It comes from the verb do, dare. Because it's so small, dati datum, it often poses problems, but the first principal part of any verb in the Latin dictionary is I blank, I whatever. I give in this case. I give myself, accusative singular, masculine or feminine, to philosophy. This is your dative. Remember I said before, verbs of giving, showing, or telling are going to expect, not required, but expect, odds are they will get the dative case, and here you have dative to philosophy. Number 9, philosophia est ars vitae. In Latin, the verb to be, just like in English, is often going to be at the end. Notice all the sentences beforehand. Verb at the end. Verb at the end. Verbs at the end. Verb at the end. But when you have a verb of is, it's not a requirement that the verb be at the end, because like the next one, it's not at the end. But that's the generally accepted place for the verbs in Latin, unless it's a verb of to be. In this case, something is something. Philosophy is the art. And is this for life or to life? Well, this is your genitive singular feminine. Why? Because we're betting that with no verb of giving, showing, or telling, just a different verb, that it's the genitive. As an aside, that genitive is also going to fall closely upon the noun it's the genitive of. The art of life, the skill of life, the whatever it was before. Life of the ancient country. Those they're often treated as a unit, and so they will put them close together if it's a genitive case. And it's going to be right up next to the word it's the genitive of. Philosophy is the art of life. Number 10, sanam formam vitae conservate. Here's my verb. It's the second person, we'll put it in brackets because it is the imperative, plural, present, active, imperative. Conserve what? A formam, and there's your genitive. Genitive, singular feminine, right next to the noun, accusative, singular, feminine. This is the direct object, sanam. Maintain a, notice I didn't translate it either. Maintain a sanam formam. I analyzed this sentence all the way through without once attempting to translate, okay? And that's what I encourage you to do, because then otherwise you are tempted to force some meaning into the sentence that the grammar doesn't support. You know what I mean? So be sure to analyze fully before you start translating. And that will, because one, and many of you may have experienced this already. Once you start down the wrong path, once you start thinking this is the direct object or this is the noun, the subject, it's hard to escape that. So come out of the gate understanding the structure of the sentence. Can maintain a healthy form of life. 11. Imarica ira creat in saniam. Here's an example of creat, the verb being a little bit in the middle. Third person singular, present indicative active. It's third person. Do we have anything in the nominative case that can be the subject? Yes. Ira is nominative, singular, feminine. Ira creates. And what kind of ira? Imarica ira. And it creates what? Insaniam, accusative, singular, feminine. So, anger. Immeasurable anger creates madness or insanity. Immeasurable anger creates madness. 12. We got two sentences here. Quid cogitas debemus iram vitare. Quid cogitas. Cogitas is second person singular, present indicative active. What do you think? Debemus, first person plural, present indicative active. This is accusative, singular, feminine, and vitare is the present active infinitive. We ought what? To avoid. This is the complementary infinitive. And notice that I've spelled it as the infinitive, as the complete. We get complete. This is not the complementary as in, hey, that looks great. No, this is the completing infinitive. Because when you say, hey, we ought, somebody, your friend, family in the class stands up, hey, we ought, what does everybody expect? To what? Come on, complete the thought. Hey, we ought to something. That's why this is called the complementary infinitive, because it completes the thought. Verbs of owing or oughting, verbs of necessity, oughting isn't a word, I know that. Verbs of necessity, obligation, and want. I want to go. So those often will take the complementary infinitive. So what do you think? We ought to avoid anger. I don't know if he answered his own question, or I don't know the scenario here either. We can make one up, but that's that's the translation. That's a reasonable translation of the sentence. What do you think? We ought to avoid anger. 13. Nulla auritia sine poena est. Auritia est. This is nominative, singular, feminine. That's our subject. Nulla modifies it. Sine poena is a phrase. Sine is a preposition that always takes the ablative. And in this case, the noun that follows sine is the ablative, singular, feminine. But when you see sine, you will always find, I think I'm fair in saying, always find an ablative case after it. So no greed is without punishment. So greed for anything, any type of greed, or even a little type of greed, there's a punishment involved. There's a fallback. Let's just avoid greed altogether, because no greed is without punishment. 14. Me sivis catenus onerat. This is a tricky one. But let's keep going on with the verb onerat. Here's our verb. Underline it twice. Third person singular, present, active, indicative. He burdens who or what? Me. This is the accusative, singular. And then this little phrase right here, ablative, in this case it's plural, feminine. He burdens me with savage chains. Where's the with, you may say? Didn't have it. Didn't use it. Not for what we call the ablative of means. For the Romans, if you put something in the ablative case, that means often, and certainly in this sentence, that is the means by which you are burdened. They did it by means of whatever ablative it is. It's called the ablative of means or instrument. And you could ask a Roman, wait a minute, don't you want to use the word with? And the Roman would say, why? I put it in the ablative case. So there you have it. He burdens me with savage chains. 15. Rotam fortunae non timent. Timent, third person plural, plural, present indicative active. Do we have any plural nouns that can be the subject? No, we don't. So they fear, or in this case, they don't fear. Let's get known in there. They do not fear what? This accusative singular feminine thing. And since there's no verb of giving, showing, or telling, we are going to say fortuna is not the dative, but is the genitive singular feminine. And it is consistent. It's right up here next to this noun. So it's going to be something of fortune. They do not fear the wheel of fortune. And I can't help but say that sentence this way. They do not fear the wheel of fortune. So that's it for the Latin. Then we will get to the English ones shortly. Let me know if you have questions.